their reason. In this verse, Allah Almighty has reminded us of the vastness of the universe, to remind us of the importance of our responsibility in fulfilling the purpose of our creation. Now, the purpose and the basic purpose of our creation is to spread the light of Allah Almighty in this world, to become a manifestation of His glory. And this is a purpose that is so great that it was exactly what makes us unique as a species and as a people in this world. In fact, in this entire galaxy. Hazrat Muslim Maud Rizwan explained that if we look at how vast the galaxy is and how insignificant we are in comparison, it can give us perspective on the importance of the objective that we have. Light years away, thousands and thousands of light years away, Allah Ta'ala has created stars, and He has pressed them into our service. They are there for the sake of humanity. For example, the Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi Rahimahullah said that the hadith that lawlaka lama khalaqtul aflaq, that if I had not created you, I would not have created the galaxy. Hazrat Khalifa Rabi Rahimahullah explained that in this hadith it does not mean the entirety of the universe, but what it means is that our galaxy and the surrounding systems. As far as the entirety of the universe, Allah knows best. But what we can say is that this galaxy and its surrounding areas are created for the sake of human beings. So that's an extremely vast space. Then also when we look at how small human life is even in this earth, how many species and how many other forms of life has to be sacrificed just for us to get to this point in our evolution. There we see what a small speck we are in that huge and grand scheme. So this demonstrates for us what we observe in nature, which is that huge and vast amounts of space and life and resources can be used just for the creation of one small thing that carries great significance. So that is the position of humanity in this broad and large picture. But Huzur explained that Allah Ta'ala did not create all of this just for us and human beings. It's not just for our actions. It is for the manifestation of His light. That's what makes us unique from the angels. Allah Ta'ala had angels before. But us having free will as being a form of life that evolved to this point in the physical world, that we have developed the ability to have a soul and free will and to reflect and to develop a relationship with Allah Ta'ala, and then to become a manifestation of His will, a manifestation of His light. That is the purpose of all of this whole vastness and everything that there is. So this is the central purpose of Islam and of the Ahmadiyyat that has to be kept in mind. Now, keeping this in mind, Huzur explained that those who do not fulfill that purpose and show weakness in that purpose, there is no way and no possibility that that purpose can be compromised for their sake. But we see many times this arises in divine communities, that people who are members of that community, out of their weakness, they say that can we make a compromise in the message, in the mission, to make it more convenient for ourselves, to avoid persecution, these different types of things. And Huzur said that if we would reflect on the grandness of the mission, how can that message and that purpose for which Allah Ta'ala created all this be compromised just because of human weaknesses and their failure to make sacrifices? So no weakness to make sacrifices can ever come in the way of the achievement of that purpose. In this regard, Huzur Raziyallahu Anhu explained that the sacrifices of something that is used for something that is greater is never considered a point of sympathy. For example, when coal is put into fire, then nobody ever feels sorry for the coal, even though coal is destroyed. But since it creates light and warmth, so it is something that we don't even give a second thought to. But on human beings, it's a completely different situation. With human beings, when we are put into the fire, Allah Ta'ala does not destroy us. Even if we had been destroyed for the sake of a greater purpose, it would have been fitting. But Allah Ta'ala doesn't destroy us. When human beings put themselves into fire for the sake of Allah Almighty, then they come out as being something far more valuable. So that's the mercy of Allah Almighty. But still, the sacrifices that we have to offer have to be there regardless. As we explain that for the creation of a country, thousands and thousands of lives are sacrificed. It's not considered something unworthy. Millions of dollars are sacrificed for the sake of an ordinary invention. It's not considered something that's unworthy, or nobody has sympathy for those sacrifices. It's considered more than worthy. So then when we come back to the purpose of the mission of Islam and for the purpose of the creation of the universe, and how small of a speck we are, even if our entire species had to be sacrificed for that purpose, it would be almost nothing that is sacrificed in its cause. Huzur said, giving the analogy that an ant and an elephant, there's a huge difference between the two. But at least you can say there is a comparison there. But when it comes to us as human beings and the purpose for which Allah Ta'ala has created us, there's no comparison whatsoever. It's not even a remote comparison. So even if all of humanity as a species has to be sacrificed for the sake of the manifestation of the light of Allah Almighty, then it is more than a worthy sacrifice. So from this point, when we come back to the sacrifices that are required of us, and sometimes the excuses that come up in the minds of some and the weaknesses that come up in the minds of others, Huzur explained that an entire community can be destroyed and that would be worthy, but that light cannot be compromised for the sake of that mission. Huzur Raziyallahu Anhu also gave an analogy in this regard. He said that he saw in a vision that he was explaining this point, that he had a mirror in his hand, and he said that the purpose of a mirror is to reflect our image back to us. That's its whole purpose. And this is also what the purpose of a human being is, to reflect and to become a manifestation of the light and the image of God. Now when a mirror loses its purpose, when it becomes dirty, when it's rusted over, when it breaks, then we don't give any second thought to throwing it away. When a mirror works, then of course we keep it carefully, we give it value. But the second it stops working, we throw it away as something completely worthless. So this is also the case with a human being, that once that mirror, once the purity of that heart becomes filthy and it ceases to reflect the light of Allah Ta'ala, then there is no hesitation, no sympathy, no second thought in completely destroying that human being. Nor should there be, because now that being has no value. But on the other hand, when that human being is a pure and perfect reflection of the light of Allah Ta'ala, then even Allah Ta'ala, as it was, hesitates at the death of that person. This is what is described in Hadith as well, where the Holy Prophet ﷺ said that on the death of Hazrat Sa'd bin Muaz, it was as if the throne of Allah Almighty had shaken. In another Hadith which says that Allah Almighty hesitates at taking the life of a believer. Of course, in the literal sense, Allah Ta'ala does not hesitate or does not feel bad, but it just demonstrates the value of such a person. A person who is a true mirror of the image of Allah Ta'ala, that person is someone who has value. That person is someone who has fulfilled the purpose of his creation. Now Huzur also mentioned that there are some who say that how much longer must we sacrifice for the sake of Islam and for the sake of Ahmadiyyat? That our time of sacrifices has become prolonged. When will the relief come from Allah Almighty? And when will we when will we be able to have the opportunity to stop offering sacrifices? Here, Huzur also pointed out that even if a person has to spend their entire life and generations have to be spent in sacrifices, that's something that we have to be ready for. In fact, this is the only thing that can get a person into heaven. Otherwise, a person never becomes deserving of heaven. He quoted an example of an objection that was made by Aryas against the teachings of Islam. He said that there was an Arya who objected and said that how is it possible, logically how does it make any sense, that we as human beings are limited beings and our actions are limited. So how can it be that we would get an eternal paradise as a result of it? That doesn't make any sense. And when you think about it, when we are such a small speck in the universe, our actions are so limited to just a small period of time, and then we consider that eternal paradise, there does seem to be a rift between the two. How can it be a system of justice where eternal paradise is given? But as Masih Maud answered, that while it is true that the actions of human beings are limited, but the intentions of human beings are not limited. If a human being had the opportunity, he would continue sacrificing forever and ever. That's the enthusiasm that he has in his heart. That is his intentions. It's not he that stops doing good deeds, but it is death that brings an end to his good deeds. It is Allah Ta'ala that brings death upon him. But if Allah Ta'ala had not brought death upon him, then he would have continued doing good deeds forever and ever. That is the pleasure and the enthusiasm he finds within himself. So when his intention is to sacrifice forever, and Islam has taught a principle of innamal a'malu binniyat, that our deeds are judged by our motives. It is not our actions but our intentions that define our reward. So it is fitting for such a person to receive an eternal paradise as well, because his good deeds and their nature of their intentions were eternal as well. So this is the only way that a person can earn the paradise of Islam. Otherwise there's no way. A temporary paradise of the Hindus or a paradise of this world that ends with death, that is a fitting reward for somebody who offered temporary sacrifices. Huzur said that a person who keeps looking back and waiting for the command to come from the Khalifa or someone to say that now you don't have to sacrifice anymore. When a person has the intention that they'll sacrifice for a little while and then it'll come to an end, anytime there is a limit, there is a condition, there is a time limit on our sacrifices, right there a person is no longer worthy of eternal paradise, the paradise of Islam, the very nature of that paradise that Islam has promised. Such a person is only worthy of being given a longer life in this world where he's given riches and given his recompense in this world, and then death should bring an end to his rewards in the same way that he's in his intentions he wished to bring an end to his sacrifices and to his good deeds. So when the grandness of the mission is looked at and the grandness of the reward that is promised by Islam is looked at, then there is no limit to the good deeds and the sacrifices that we are required to offer. And there is no limit to the time limit and the extent to which we should be ready to offer those sacrifices for the sake of Allah Almighty. So this verse of the Holy Quran, which reminds us of the point that the sun and the moon and the stars, the entire world, the entire galaxy has been subjugated for the service of us as human beings. It reminds us of the grandness of the purpose of the creation of this entire universe. It is not just for us as human beings, and that purpose cannot be compromised for the sake of our weaknesses. When all of this has been put into motion to fulfill that purpose, then anything that gets in the way of that purpose will be destroyed, including us, if God forbid we come in the way of that purpose as well. So in order to fulfill that purpose, it is necessary to have this in mind. And Huzur said that when we have this in mind, and if we are able to understand this, that Islam and Ahmadiyyat is for the purpose of establishing the light of Allah Ta'ala in this world, then he said there will no longer be any need for us to be motivated with speeches. In fact, if anything, we will need to be held back, but we won't need to be motivated. So this basic point that Huzur described is such a powerful and fundamental point that the more we reflect on it, the more we will get that enthusiasm within ourselves to get to a point that Huzur wants us to be at, where he doesn't have to continuously push us from behind, but instead he would have the pleasure of being given the opportunity to hold us back because of our excessive enthusiasm. So reflection on the universe and on the purpose of our creation and our insignificance in it, with compared to the significance of our responsibility, that is something that can strengthen our resolve in fulfilling the purpose of Islam and make us those who are the true servants of Allah Almighty and of Khilafat. May Allah Almighty enable us to do so. So now if there's any questions, and we can briefly address them. No questions? Okay.
I have a question. Like you say that all this universe is the benefit of human being. How we, like little kids and Khuddam, will understand what kind of benefit will it, just like a light from there, or maybe from gravity that is holding our earth, and what, anything else other than that?
Allah Ta'ala has said that He has subjugated them into our service, that they exist for our sake, and that had it not been for us or the Holy Prophet ﷺ, they would never have been created in the first place. So this has many different meanings, one of which is that, for example, if you look at us as human beings, it is not possible for us to, in this physical world, according to the laws of this physical world, for us to just have come out of nowhere, poof. There was a need for us to evolve out of a billion other forms of life. There was a need for there to be millions and millions of years. There was a need for that natural selection to progress over millions of years to get to the point that we are at. So according to the laws of nature, that expanse, that broadness of life was needed just for our creation, just for us to be there. It was the only way that it could have happened in this physical world. So also for this earth to exist in this circumstances that it is right now, there was a need for the creation of an entire galaxy. According to the laws of this world, it could not have existed simply in and of itself. So for us as human beings to exist, it is necessary for there be to a vastness of life from which we are born out of. How the degree to which it is unlikely for us to exist means that there has to be a huge vastness of life for us to even get to this point. And there has to be a huge vastness of space just for that environment to be created that we live in. So that's one answer. But another answer is also that every thing in the universe has some kind of subtle effect on us in one way or the other. The moon and the sun, they have the most immediate effect. Then the planets, they have a very subtle effect on us as well. And then the different stars, they have a much more light effect on human beings, but some effect is there, some or the other. But Allah Ta'ala has also described that this universe and the earth is only suspended in its place where it is because of the gravitational balance that has been created by the equilibrium of all the stars everywhere. So if we were to remove one part of the galaxy, then the entire other part of the galaxy would be thrown out of balance. So there are many ways, but in essence, all of this has been created to get to this singular point of humanity, of the point that we are at, the point we're presently at.
There is another, I would say, prophecy of the Holy Quran that there is a time when man is ready, that he will make contact with life
Hmm.
beyond what we understand to be life.
Hmm.
Do you have any insight?
Gee, the word used in the Holy Quran is dabbatun, which, as we know, is used for insects or animals, or it could be anything. So, what that prophecy, all it takes for it to be fulfilled is, for example, even if we find some bacteria on Mars or something like that. The principle and the purpose of that prophecy, one of them purposes, is to remind us that life is not something that is confined only to this world. And if we can find even, bacteria or single cell organisms on another planet, it reminds us that Allah Ta'ala can create life in something equal and even superior to us elsewhere too. It is just a matter of time. So the verse of the Holy Quran does not necessarily mean that we will make intelligent contact or that we will they will communicate with us. It just means that we will find that Allah Ta'ala will bring the two forms of life together.
It says when we are ready.
Mm.
Isn't there something to that effect? To the
I don't
verse?
remember that wording. I'll have to double check.
Yeah.
Mm.
Jazakallah.
Okay. Jazakallah.